Hey everybody, it's Ed. I want to thank 4 brand new podcast supporters: Kristen Barbary, Casey Bergstrom, Alex Machado, and Ashley Sack. These 4 women signed up on the website to support the podcast through Patreon, and I really appreciate it. It really still blows my mind, not only that people listen, but that then they want to support the podcast with their hard-earned dollars. And I can't thank you enough. It really means the world to me. If you want to learn more about the options, go to mountainandprairie.com/support. Thanks a lot. Hey, this is Ed Robertson, and this is the Mountain and Prairie Podcast, where I introduce you to some of the innovative individuals who are shaping the future of the American West. I meet most of these people through my work in land conservation or through my hobbies and interests that revolve around spending time up high in the mountains. My guests include ranchers, writers, entrepreneurs, conservationists, athletes, artists, adventurers, pretty much anyone who's doing important work, has an interesting story, and loves the American West. My guest today is Matt Skoglund. Matt and his wife Sarah are bison ranchers and the owners of North Bridger Bison Ranch, which is located in Montana's iconic Shields Valley. The Skoglund's bison operation is deeply rooted in holistic management and regenerative agriculture principles, and their goal is to produce healthy and delicious meat while simultaneously improving the land, helping the environment, and contributing to Montana's economy. Through hard work and genuine curiosity, Matt has found his life's true calling in bison ranching, a challenging yet deeply rewarding business that combines so many of Matt's passions into one dream job. By now you might be assuming that Matt comes from a Western ranching family, or perhaps holds agriculture degrees from a land-grant university. But the reality is that Matt grew up in the Chicago area. He attended college in the Northeast, then law school, then began a career as an attorney in the litigation department of a large Chicago law firm. After several years of practicing law, he and Sarah could no longer resist the desire to move west, so they took a leap of faith and moved to Bozeman. Matt eventually found a job with the National Resource Defense Council, where he worked for nearly 10 years, digging deep into many conservation issues that affect the Greater Yellowstone Ecosystem, including bison. Finally, in 2018, after several years of dreaming and planning, they pulled the trigger, bought some land, and started their adventure in bison ranching. Matt and Sarah's story is inspiring and instructive, especially for those who've ever had dreams of pursuing lives and careers in the West. Instead of jumping all over the place like I normally do in these conversations, this interview is pretty much split into 2 main sections. The first half covers all the details about North Bridger Bison, how they acquired the ranch, their process of field harvesting the meat, who their customers are, and some of the biggest surprises of running their own business. The second half of our conversation covers some broader personal topics, such as how being a father has affected Matt's outlook, why he was able to walk away from a lucrative career in law, and the life lessons learned from being a college hockey player. Whether you're strictly interested in agriculture or only interested in people's personal evolutions, there are aspects of the Skoglund's journey that will be fascinating to both groups. Be sure to check the episode notes for a list of everything we discussed and links to everything. Hope you enjoy. It's always hard for me to figure out how to start these things because I got so much I want to talk to you about. But maybe the best way to do it is if you can just kind of set the scene for your bison ranch. All right, where is the ranch, and what's the landscape like around there?
So it's in the Shields Valley of Montana, which is a absolutely beautiful, spectacular place. Very much an agricultural ranching valley. We're on the west side of the Shields Valley, right up against the North Bridger Mountains. And so we're about 35 minutes north of Bozeman, about 14, 15 miles past Bridger Bowl, and then 10 miles west of Wilsall, Montana.
Yep.
And so it's really unique. So the ranch itself, and so one, I always tell folks is that one, we did not buy a turnkey ranch. We're starting from, we've started from scratch here. And then on the ranch, it's sagebrush, grass, We have a few really awesome springs, and then we literally don't have a tree.
Wow.
So there's not a tree on the ranch. But we've got the North Bridgers to the west and then the Crazy Mountains to the east. So the setting is absolutely spectacular. Just really, really beautiful.
Yeah, the Crazy Mountains are some of the prettiest mountains I've ever seen. I used to do a lot of work over in Big Timber, so I was kind of looking westward at them, and man, that is just spectacular. So how did you end up in that specific spot when you decided, all right, I want to go into this business? Why there versus other places?
A few reasons. I mean, the main one was we found the right piece of land in the right spot at the right price. And so, I mean, and we can, go into this, but I was going to say, the other thing I tell folks, besides that, we didn't buy a turnkey ranch, is we also just didn't wake up one day and say, oh, we're going to start a bison ranch. I mean, there was a lot of thought and research, lots of heart-to-hearts between my wife, Sarah, and I, lots of other ideas that, came close on and then chickened out. But then, so can tell you the full story. But as far as the land, once we got serious about, saying, we want to do this, we want to start a bison ranch. We knew we want, we've been in Bozeman for over 11 years. And so we wanted it to be somewhere in the greater Bozeman area, close enough that we could get into town when, we needed to see friends, what have you, but also far enough away so that we could, grow, expand, not be, hemmed in by subdivisions or something.
Yep.
And so candidly, like, I really never thought any of this would happen.
Yeah.
I know, Bozeman is blowing up like crazy right now.
Yep.
And so land prices are insane. And so one of the things was when we decided, hey, we're going to do this, we got lucky and we bought our house in Bozeman over 10 years ago, and we live right downtown.
Yep.
And so I said, hey, we'll do whatever we have to do to borrow money, but we are not selling this house. And so as we started looking for land, we, trying to find a 3-bedroom house for Sarah, me, Aldo, Greta, with enough land to try to make a go at this was just a non-starter. And then also as Bozeman's growing, it's really growing to the west. It's sprawling to the west,
mm-hmm.
but north you're protected, east you're protected. And we've just always loved that area of up against the North Bridgers. I've cut firewood up there for a number of years. And so we were looking on literally just, Google, looking on land sites. And then I came across these, and I know you're obviously involved in land conservation, but used to be involved in real estate. So
yeah.
It was a really interesting, I guess, not straightforward real estate transaction, in that we came across these 2 parcels with nothing on them, vacant land. They'd been on the market for years and years. And the price was just way below everything else around. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, we might as well go take a look. So this is like last March of 2018. And so I took Aldo and Greta, and we, I called the ranch broker and went out and looked, and I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. And then went out the next weekend with Sarah, and she's like, yeah, this is really cool. And then as we talked to the ranch broker, he said, there's actually a 3rd parcel for sale. It's not publicly listed because there's tenants there and the owner doesn't want to scare the tenants. But it's got a little ranch house on it. It's kind of beat up, but there's 3 parcels. And so, anyways, I can go into all details if you want, but we ultimately, at first we said, can we buy 2 and lease the 3rd with the right of first refusal? And they said no. And we knew we needed all 3.
Yeah.
And so we got it under contract last June, and it was a whole ordeal last summer. Both, there were 3 different sellers. One of them had died. There was an estate attorney involved.
Damn.
And yeah, they were just like highly motivated sellers. And so like people have asked, like, how many properties did you guys look at? And I say, as far as in person, we literally looked at one piece of land.
That's awesome.
Just because like it was, and I kept looking online, but there was nothing that came close as far as price, location, everything. And I think at the end of the day, it was caught in the middle because, multiple friends have said, oh yeah, I know that piece. And I've talked to like 2 or 3 different people that looked at it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was just caught in the middle where if you're, just give you example of like a hedge fund billionaire that falls in love with Montana
yep.
and wants to buy a slice of the Montana dream, like this is not for him or her.
Sure.
We literally don't have a tree. There's no trout stream. They're also not adjacent. Like there's a half section in between our parcels that we don't own. And then if you're from Bozeman, Livingston, wherever, you drive by at 75 miles an hour and see a big sign that says 320 acres price reduced, which was the sign at the corner. And you look out the window and see just a bunch of sage and you're like, well, what am I going to do with that? Mm-hmm. So it was just on the market for a long time and it just turned out to be the perfect place for us. And then, the more we explored it, the more we just like fell like hard for it. And now, we've owned it for 13 months and done a ton of work and we've got bison out there and it's just this magical piece of land.
I'm telling you, I was in the real estate business for probably close to 15 years and associated with ranches in one way or the other for like 10. And that is amazing that all worked out with all those different buyers and sellers and where you are. And I mean, that's a testament to you and your patience and you and your wife's patience. Cause that's unreal. So when you were kind of deciding you wanted to do this and you're like, all right, I'm on the lookout for land. I should know this, but I don't. I mean, what were your criteria? I mean, did you think, all right, I need X number of animals to be able to make a living doing this. And so in order to support X number of animals, I need Y number of acres. Is that kind of the math you do? Or, I mean, how did you even begin the process of figuring out what you need for that?
Sure. Well, I guess, can I back up a couple?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So I guess, the full story is, I had been working at the Natural Resources Defense Council, the NRDC, for years, and absolutely love the organization and the amazing work they do. But I was just, I guess, really craving to do something on my own, tangible, land-based, entrepreneurial, for-profit. Like I remember reading Yvon Chouinard's book, Let My People Go Surfing. And
I love it.
Love it. Yeah. And I just love, the way he could sell Patagonia tomorrow for $1 gazillion. And he uses that company to try to make the world a better place.
Yep.
And working, and there's things that come with nonprofits that are, can be kind of a headache. So I just would just really wanted to do something on my own. So I had a few different ideas, but always chickened out. We had 2 kids along the way. And then in 2017, I was like, I got to figure this out. And I had been thinking about a bison ranch, in the bison industry. At NRDC, one of my main issue that I worked on was the Yellowstone wild bison issue. So, I know a fair amount about the animal. I mean, that's a whole different world than bison ranching, but
sure.
Had a deep love for the animal. And, I was thinking about it, but I was like, the whole, like, I'm a big meat hunter, food person, gardener, morel mushroom, nut, all that stuff. But when it came to bison ranching, I was like, at the end, like, bison lived this great life out on pasture, and then to work him into a corral, through a squeeze chute, onto a trailer, ship him 2 hours, all that stress. I was like, I just don't want to be a part of that. And,
sure.
And then I read Dan O'Brien's Buffalo for the Broken Heart.
I love that book.
It's unreal.
Have you met that guy?
No, he's a total hero of mine. And, I've talked to his son-in-law, but I've not met him yet. I want to make a pilgrimage to Wild Idea Ranch, or their place in South Dakota.
Yep.
I just am so busy right now, I haven't had a chance to.
He's a badass.
Yeah, he's amazing. he's amazing. Their whole operation is amazing. But literally in the fall of 2017, while reading his book, that was the true light bulb moment when I read about his, pioneering the field harvest of bison, which I did not know even existed. And it was like an instant, like when I read it, I was like, I want to do that. And I know there's a market for it. And I know that market is only going to grow because more and more people are asking about where their food comes from. I meet more and more people that, don't hunt and will say like, I don't eat meat, but I will eat meat if my neighbor killed an elk or a deer. And so when I read that book and particularly the part about field harvest, that lit a fire under my ass to that's when I said, okay, this is something we should really stop, like the daydreaming, I guess exit the daydreaming phase and go into the, I want to actively pursue this phase. And so I then I just Googled like bison ranching consultant, and there happened to be, I found a guy. Yeah, literally.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so I literally, this guy, Roland Cruz, amazing guy, lives in Bozeman. We met for lunch in January of 2018. I told him my story, and he kind of interrupted me and was like, look, if you're serious about this, you should come to my holistic management workshop on a bison ranch. And I took it both as this would be helpful for you and also as a test. Like, are you a dreamer or are you serious about this? And so, I went back, talked to Sarah, and she's like, you got to go. And so I went, and it was in March, and I just ate it up. Like, I mean, just, going in deep in the weeds on grass, soil, grazing, water, all that stuff. Just loved it. But I still had this, like, I'd say pretty strong insecurity about like, I'm not a rancher. I'm not from a ranching family.
Yeah.
I'm born and raised in suburban Chicago. Like, is this even possible? Mm-hmm. And so there was a guy there who was about my age, and I was chatting with him one night, and I was like, hey, he manages a bison ranch in Kentucky. And I said, so did you study ag in college? And he was like, no, not at all. And if I did, I would have had to unlearn all of that. He's like, everything that we do, I've learned at workshops like this. And I was like, like that's interesting. Yeah. And anyway, so I came back from that just really excited. And I knew, I was like, I want to pursue this. And so kept researching. And then at some point that spring, I just, it was really the mental piece. It was such a huge part of it. And so at some point that spring I crossed, I guess the bridge where the risk of not doing it became greater than the risk of doing it. And we got serious. And so Roland, I worked with him. And so I guess, long-winded answer to your question about what criteria did we use to look for land. We knew we needed a decent sized parcel. Our goal is to get up to a herd of about 200 animals. So, and ideally we would buy like a home base, mm-hmm. And then start our ranch and show our neighbors, others that, hey, we know what we're doing and we're improving our land. We're managing our animals well. And then hopefully we can get a couple leases, because leasing is really, ultimately the way to go.
Sure.
And so in May, after I'd seen it a couple times and we'd been out there and I'd talked to the ranch broker, and out here, as school's about to get out and it's like peak green up and the mountains are white, it's the real estate season. We, as I said, I kept looking online, but it came down to, at some point, late May 2018, it came down to, it was like that chunk of land or nothing. Like, mm-hmm. if we lose that, there is no plan B. Like, it's not like you're looking for you find your dream house and someone else buys it and then you get a house and, you never think about it again.
Sure.
There literally was no plan B. And so all this work I'd put into it would, I guess, go on a shelf. And with the way Bozeman's going, I'm not sure it would leave the shelf. So I called Roland and was like, hey, will you come out and ground truth this land with me? Like, I don't know enough at this point to make the call. And that's, I think one of the things that's been very helpful through this whole thing is like, I'm very aware that I'm not, I didn't grow up in a ranching family. I don't have ranching experience. So, I needed to and continue to need to rely on others to learn. Mm-hmm. And we knew we'd make mistakes. Like we wear that on our chest. So Roland came out and walked it, and he was like, man, he's like, for the price, like, I can't believe this. Like I just, this is much better than I thought it would be. And he said, hey, all the pieces are here. The grasses, the forbs, water, everything. He's like, ultimately you'll need more land. But this is something you can start with and it's solid. And so that was what I needed for the green light. And very, very, very shortly thereafter, we got it under contract with as long a closing date as we could have, so we could continue to work on a business plan, learn more. So then last summer I went into, pretty hardcore research, meet with ranchers, that mode. And, again, just the more I learned, the more I met with folks, the more excited I got, the more I believed in our idea and vision. And I guess just on that note, like one of the coolest parts of this whole thing has been all the amazing people I've met, mm-hmm. And just the like unbelievable generosity of time and information and knowledge. And like I remember one story, the Aaron Polson, this really great guy. He's the manager of the Snowcrest Bison Ranch in the Upper Ruby. Yep. And he agreed to give me a tour of the ranch, and we got in his pickup, and I said, hey, do you mind if I take notes? He's like, oh yeah, no, of course. And, like a half hour later, I was writing something down that he'd said, and he like stopped the truck and was looking over my shoulder, and he's like, oh, there's two T's in that. Like he wanted to make sure that I got it exactly right. And that was the kind of folks we met with. And so we financing was a roller coaster, but we had to push back closing a little bit. We got everything done. And the land became ours last September.
That's a great story. And we're going to talk more about your background, but I would imagine that the collaboration there in the truck and sharing notes was a far cry from your experience in the corporate legal world, before the cutthroat world of high stakes legal stuff. So anyway,
it's funny. Another just 100% yes. And so one thing I found was, in the world of ranching, like it makes sense. Like now that I'm in it, that like, each person's ranch, like there's a lot of pride in how, that person or family operates their ranch. And so, to walk into a place and say, hey, you should do this and you should do that and you should change this and you should change that. Like that's just, that just doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. And so whereas in my former world, yeah, I mean, people on conference calls, they're talking over each other and debate, constant, exchanging of opinions, conflict, etc. And I remember the first couple of meetings, someone being like, hey, if it's okay. And again, if it's okay, I might make one suggestion. And so I ended up, I would say I was meeting with someone and say, hey, at the outset, listen, I am new. I am as green as it gets. So please fire away. Like if I'm saying something that sounds crazy to you, interrupt me and tell me. Like I am in sponge mode, and do not hold back with advice, ideas. Like I really, because I think folks are just very respectful of other folks' operations and hesitant to, pass judgment or offer unsolicited advice. So yeah, that was one, very, very big difference.
Well, you say that you are new to this and you don't have experience, but when I listen to you talk and I hear your mindset and the way you approach it with curiosity and with humility and with a sense of collaboration, I mean, it really reminds me of kind of the operating system of the Phillips family at Ranchlands, who I recently had both Big and Little Duke on the podcast. And, they've been doing it Duke is the fourth is the fourth generation ranching, and their operating system is the same as yours. I mean, obviously they've been doing it for generations, but they approach it even now with the same outlook that you're approaching it. So I think that's really neat to hear and see. I mean, it's kind of like that's what you need to have to do things on an innovative, kind of in an innovative way. One question I want to back up real quick, because I bet people will be curious about it. Can you talk a little bit about the field harvest, kind of what that is and why that is preferable to shipping them out?
Sure. So field harvest, literally is shooting a bison, killing it in the pasture where it stands. And so I guess the alternative, and what the 99.99999% of other places do, is at the end, ship, whether it's bison, cattle, what have you, load them up on a trailer and send them off to a slaughterhouse processing facility somewhere, and many of them, including bison, the vast majority, to a feedlot to be fattened up. And so, bison just have not been domesticated like cattle have. So, so that's just it's got to be stressful for any animal, but for bison, the stress is just through the roof. So to me, the two huge pieces of field harvest are, one, the ethical, humane side of it, that this bison has, lived out on pasture or, on eating, variety of grasses and forbs, and, that's all it's known. And then standing there, a single shot to the head, and it immediately drops, pancakes, goes into outer space, doesn't have a bad second. So from an ethical, humane standpoint, it doesn't get any better. And then from a meat quality standpoint, there's no stress in that meat. And it has surprised me that you don't hear as much about that in the world of, I guess, meat you buy at grocery stores. So, in the world of livestock. In hunting, you hear about it a lot, right? Like that if, somebody makes a bad shot on a deer or an elk and they have to track it for hours and hours and hours, and there's all this stress that it's going to affect the quality of the meat. And so as I've, told folks about our operation and what we're doing, when I talk to chefs, I mean, they literally finish the sentence for me and they say, wow, your meat must be incredible. There's no stress in it. And, so field harvest, right now we've been selling quarters, custom exempt, which just means, we don't, right now we're not dealing with state inspection. We pre-sell an animal to 4 folks, and then I go out and, drive into the pasture where the bison are, and they know me, they know my truck. And, it's, I have a 308 rifle with a 168 grain copper bullet, and I wait till a bison, I know which animals are meat animals based on ear tags, and I wait till one is turned broadside, standing still, and it's a single shot to the ear, and it drops, outer space instantaneously. And then I field dress it, and I take it to a different pasture, field dress it, and then take it to the processor. And actually, kind of to go full circle, last December, when we were trying to figure out where we were going to buy our bison, we were talking to Deep Creek Ranch up near Choteau, Montana, which is where we ultimately got him. And while I was talking to them, they said, hey, Wild Idea is going to, Dan O'Brien's outfit is going to be here next week, field harvesting some of our animals. And I was like, oh my God, I need to see this. And so I was able to be up there and see the Wild Idea team and their mobile slaughterhouse, field harvest a number of animals. And it was just really impressive. Just the care, respect, just how, I don't know. It was just really, really, really well done. And, grilled their shooter with questions. And, again, just further reinforced that this is what I want to do. I feel really strongly about this.
That's really, I love hearing all that for a lot of reasons, but I think one is it underscores the complexity of what you're doing. And I think, you're an entrepreneur and you're doing this, you got this entrepreneurial venture. And I think a lot of times nowadays, especially people think of when they think entrepreneur, they think tech startup or something like that. But when you hear of all the different aspects of this business and all the different regulations and all these different things you're having to figure out, it shows how damn complicated it is. And so I guess the one question I have is, you've got some time with this business under your belt now, and what's been the biggest surprise of running this business? Like when you were dreaming about it before you actually got serious and put the money down, you had this idea of how it would go, and now you've got the real life experience. So what's been the biggest surprise?
Man, great question. I think, one, and this is not a bullshit answer by any stretch of the imagination. I think just how much I love it and how natural a fit it is for me.
Yeah.
And I say that because, for the 13 years before, I guess 16 years before doing this, I had 3 years of law school, 3 years in Chicago, a decade at NRDC. And so this is a radical change from what I did before, which were, office jobs. Mm-hmm. And while I did a ton of work and, was, very thorough in the due diligence phase as far as researching the idea and all those things, you still, wonder, like, when you do it, you leave your job, you quit, you take on a bunch of debt, and you do this. Like, there's a voice in your head of like, you're definitely, there's some fear and some stress. And so for me, I just wondered, like, oh my God, like what if in, January, February, I'm out there, it's 10 below and, this isn't for me or something. I don't know. I just
yeah.
There's that wonder of like, is there like an, oh shit, this sounded really good, but, and I'm like really deep into it. And so, it's just such a huge change, both work, lifestyle, everything. And so I guess for me, just how natural, like I remember very early, like, I go back to January because I left NRDC in December, in an NRDC, my old job, like you're getting emails all the time and, there's just a lot going on. And so at the ranch, we have no cell reception. So I just wondered, like, on a Tuesday at 3:00, no cell reception, I'm out there with the Bison, like, how would I feel? Would I be calm and happy, or would it be kind of like, what am I doing here?
Sure.
And it was just so, I guess, seamless, and just felt like, man, this feels good. And so that's one I guess pleasant surprise is just you don't know, you think it makes sense going
Sure.
into it, but like I'm very grateful that I believe I've found my calling. Like I really love what I do. And then another thing is just like, I guess related to that, just overnight, the difference in mindset of like work, like it doesn't feel, and let me be clear, the shit is at the fan multiple times. Like this is not some sort of like, all rainbows and pretty sunsets. It's like I have some stories and there's certainly been a lot of stress and craziness. But when you're working for yourself and working to try to build something meaningful and tangible, so much of it just doesn't feel like work. And it's a 7-day-a-week job. And so, but there's a lot of flexibility. And so I guess been surprised, just like I work a lot, but it's just different mentally. And I also, I always tell folks like you mentioned the tech startup, like, what we're doing here is not, we're not trying to, build an app and sell it to Google in 5 years. Like this is a lifetime plan.
Yeah.
And so there's something about really building something. And again, it's very tangible. I mean, you can go out and see it and touch it, and taste it. And so, so those are have been a couple great surprises.
So you've got this varied background, and we'll talk more about the details, but you're a lawyer, you went to law school, you worked in an office, and now I think we're about the same age. Where are you, 40, 41?
41.
41, me too. And so thinking, and I kind of had a similar thing with my job. I did all this real estate stuff for so long, and finally, probably about the same time, we both kind of transitioned, and I transitioned into full-time conservation, and all of a sudden I was like, golly, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I work hard. Same idea. I work hard, but it's not like grunt work. I mean, it just kind of flows, and it's this really good feeling. But when I think back, sometimes I'm like, man, I should have started doing this when I was 23. But then I'm like, actually, I don't know that I would have appreciated it or that it would have worked, because it's this culmination of all the experiences I've had. So do you think the same thing? I mean, do you think if you had started doing this at age 23, if it would have been a fit, or is it a fit because you've had all these other experiences that have kind of meshed together to get you to where you are?
You nailed it. And I like strongly agree with you. And it's something that I have talked about with multiple people, because, people have seen what we're doing and have come up and like, oh my God, like, how did you guys do that? And like, I'm frustrated or whatever. And so, yeah, there is no way that I would enjoy it as much as I do. And I think, well, hell, I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't have those experiences. And so, I think that, the times where you're in a job where you're really frustrated, I guess feeling pretty restless, you definitely don't realize it at the time, but it'll pay off eventually. And so, I remember, like, it's a longer story, but the bison this summer, we were doing a pasture move, and it went wrong. It didn't go well.
Yeah.
The bison got out. It was just about to get dark, and I called a friend and mentor, and we decided we were just going to leave them for the night. And the stress was just, off the charts, like truly the most stress I've had since our son was born, and Sarah had an unplanned C-section. Like, it was just unbelievable. But even in that, like, that night, I remember thinking, like, even in that moment of like just horrible, intense stress, that like I wouldn't have traded it for the world.
That's cool.
Like, cause, and there are plenty of, rough moments or stress or whatever, I just had something go wrong with UPS that ultimately worked out, but it was so frustrating. And so I guess, if you didn't have like the time in the trenches and, that experience, I think it would be, like you're saying, if you're doing it when you're 23, you just wouldn't have the perspective and the appreciation for it. So I feel really strongly about that.
Yeah, and I think if I've been listening to this 5 years ago or 6 years ago, and hearing you talk about being stressed, but kind of thankful for the stress, I wouldn't have understood it. But now I do, because I've got such a different perspective on things. And so I would say to anybody who's listening, like, if you're 23 or 24 and you don't understand what the hell we're talking about, it's an old man's secret.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's totally true. And then the irony for me is that, with a pretty non-traditional path to ranching, it's just bizarre. Like, the background of as a former lawyer, it's an incredible background for what I'm doing. And never in a million years in law school would I have thought that would have led to bison ranching. But dealing with different rules, regulations, laws, policy like that, I'm very comfortable with that world. And then my years at NRDC working with wild bison and different relationships. And it's just funny. It's funny how the world works. You take this winding path, and just, I don't know, kind of cracks me up.
So when did you decide to make the shift from the legal world to the environmental conservation advocacy world? How did that go down?
My earliest memories, I have loved nature ever since I was a little kid. Mm-hmm. And then I got really into fly fishing in high school. And fly fishing was my, I guess, gateway drug into conservation, if you will, but, like joining Trout Unlimited and, learning about, just the different environmental threats out there and the groups that exist to fight them. And it was one of the reasons I went to law school. And so, I graduated from law school in 2005. I clerked for a federal magistrate judge in Chicago for a year. And then I spent 2 years in the litigation group of a large law firm in Chicago. And, I knew it wasn't for me long term. And I just, super interested in conservation. But our move to Montana, when we moved out here, I didn't have a job, nor did my wife. It was a lifestyle move. Like I went to college in Vermont, and it was my first time, being raised in suburban Chicago, living in a place, in rural Vermont. And I got into hunting in college through this, amazing guy that I met. And so just at some point I knew that I wanted to live somewhere where I had legitimate access to the outdoors. Like not like you hear people say, oh, it's great, we can drive 4 hours to this spot. And, but the reality is, like, after a hard work week, on a Friday night, like, you're just not going to do it.
No, definitely not.
Right. So it was just super important to me that, like, you only live once, life is short. And I just wanted to live somewhere where I could, fish, hunt, have a bird dog, and just have the outdoors at my fingertips. And I had, started coming out west a long time ago, fell real hard for Montana. And so in 2008, when Sarah and I were about to get married, we were living in Chicago, and, we were renting a place, and we started talking about buying a condo. And I was like, I can't do it. Like, we're going to wake up here in 30 years. And as much as I love the city of Chicago, it just wasn't for me.
Sure.
And so that really was the impetus for us to move, and Bozeman was the place. So so I'd applied for a job with NRDC, and I hoped I'd get it, but I didn't know if I would. So I guess, wanting to work in conservation had been something that had been floating around my brain for a long, long time. But the actual move to Montana in 2008 was a lifestyle. It was, choice.
That takes guts to do that, especially when you get on the track at one of those big law firms, because I got a lot of friends that do that, and they make it hard for you to say no. At least that's my understanding. I mean, they want you there, and they reward you for being there, but it's just – it can be a treadmill, man. I mean, you know a lot better than I do. I'm not telling you that you don't know.
Yeah. Oh, no, for sure. I mean, I guess for me – I knew it was, it was never for me. And I, the firm I worked for, there were some great people there, and I had plenty of good experiences, and, but it wasn't, it was, a good place to start. And, one thing so after I graduated from law school, when I moved, Sarah and I moved in together in Chicago in this, I guess, summer of 2005. And then I clerked for a year for this amazing guy, Judge Denlow, federal magistrate judge. He actually married Sarah and me.
Oh, wow.
And just a really, really, really great guy. Great person. And so I worked for the federal government for a year. And then when that was over, I then went to this law firm where I'd been a summer associate. And obviously there was going to be a big change in salary. And I said to Sarah, I was like, hey, I'm switching jobs, but we are not switching our lifestyle in any way, shape, or form. Because I knew that, being a big firm lawyer just was not for me. Mm-hmm. And so, we were able to save money, and I, again, good experience, but I never got caught up in the, partnership track, trying to, or the money or anything like that. I knew, I guess it was a means to an end. It was a place to get good experience, save some money, work hard. And I knew so it wasn't that hard for me.
But so how is that though? I mean, like, because that all makes sense now looking back. But when what were you, like probably 27, 28 at that point? I mean,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I would
20,
think,
29.
I mean, it takes a certain type of person to turn that stuff down or to do your own thing in the midst of the herd. And the herd there's a very specific thing they do, and they make a lot of money, and they buy a lot of stuff and get a big mortgage, and then you have to make more money. And so, like, have you always been like that, willing to kind of make your own choices, do your own thing? Or is that something you learned? Is that how your parents are? Where does that come from? Because you say it, but as if it's no big deal, but it is a big deal. I don't know that I would have been able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I think, I guess, I'm the middle of three boys. So I think, I've always had an independent streak. I like rocking to my own beat, and my parents always supported that. Like when I got really into fly fishing, when I turned 16, like they were comfortable with me driving to Wisconsin for the day to fly fish and drive home, exhausted at night. I think, and I guess I just, through a variety of life experiences, and meeting people, I just, I guess saw folks that had from a superficial material, all the stuff that popular media and culture tells you are the markers of success and happiness. I guess I, was somehow fortunate at some age to see that that's not the case. And that, a lot of those people are actually like, very deeply unhappy. And, it's kind of the crazy thing, right? Like you work this job that you hate, to make a bunch of money, to spend it on things that don't bring you happiness, which seems insane.
That's good. I mean, yeah. I've talked to enough people on this podcast that it seems like I feel like I've got some perspective, because that's kind of a common theme of being willing to do your own thing. And I think a lot of it just comes down to confidence, the confidence to kind of follow yourself, and not arrogance at all. It's not that, because arrogance, I think, is showing you don't have any confidence. So you were a college athlete, hockey player. How have the lessons learned from being pretty focused in on sports for a big part of your life, has that carried over into your current business venture? Man,
I mean, I sports, playing hockey in college, you learn so much about life, right? Like as far as winning, losing, teamwork, working hard, and it's something I feel really strongly about, because it's, I think it's changing a little bit, but for so long, college athletes were portrayed as, college sports were bad, dumb jocks, all that stuff. And, you think about, I look back and I think about, what I learned in a random history lecture versus what I learned on a bus ride back from a game on a Saturday night at, midnight, with your teammates. And, the bus ride is what sticks with you and builds character. So I think that, for me, it's I think just, the teamwork piece of it is, I played, hockey's a team sport. And I was fortunate to be on a lot of really good teams with great players. So I think for me, it's always being very aware that, trying to surround yourself with good people, a good team, and then giving credit where credit's due. So I think there's a fair amount of humility that comes with, playing team sports, because you're on a team. It's not, it's different than an individual sport or another individual endeavor. Sure. Another thing we have in common is we have kids that are about the same age. And is your oldest is in kindergarten? Is that right? Yeah. Yep. So you're like a year ahead of me. When I had kids and I started kind of understanding how it all works,
or before I had kids, I'd say people would start talking about having kids and I would just instantly zone out. And I'm like, that's boring or that's cliche or whatever. And now I'm obsessed with it because it's so awesome and I love it. But all the cliches you hear before you have kids, now I realize they're cliches because they're true. I mean, it's crazy. So how did having kids, it's kind of a big question. You could probably write a book about it, but how, if at all, did having kids kind of change your approach to work or just life in general? Because I guess I guess you'd had kids for a while when you made this switch, but did your relationship with them or your, being a father, did that factor in at all to your decision to kind of chase this dream that you're chasing?
Yeah, hugely, huge way. One of the things as I was trying to figure out, I had this, little, dream of like doing something entrepreneurial on my own, tangible, and in a way that would make the world a better place. Very, very, very broadly defined. But what really helped me was like process of elimination, like thinking about things that I didn't want to do. And so, our son Otto is 6 and our daughter Greta is 2.5. And when we had Otto, what you were saying, I was just nodding like, yeah, it's kind of instantaneous overnight. The way that you think about things and approach life. And so I guess when it comes to the Bison Ranch, when I was at NRDC, I didn't travel a ton compared to like, say a consultant or something, but there was work travel, and each year it just became more painful. Mm-hmm. I really dreaded getting on airplanes. And I was very lucky that my parents I have great parents and they were very involved in our lives. My dad was just, and my mom, but, just super involved, in our lives growing up. And so that's something that's like, well, yeah, that's like my number one value right there. Mm-hmm. And so when I thought about what to do next, I knew I wanted it to be something Bozeman based, where I didn't have to travel a lot, like you think of something where if I had to go to, San Francisco a bunch or Chicago or whatever, and it'd just be like, yeah, no interest whatsoever. Yeah. And so, I have not been on an airplane in well over a year. And
that's awesome.
I love it. Like I absolutely love it. So yeah, that was a huge factor for me, was something that was family friendly, because, I'm more of a homebody. Like I love being at home with Sarah and the kids. Like I love working hard, being outside, but at the end of the day, I love coming home and being with my family. And, so being a dad, it's the ultimate responsibility, something I take very seriously. And yeah, it was a huge factor in this decision.
Yeah. I love hearing that. It really is amazing how those kids change your perspective. I used to think when I'd see somebody who, they used to have a job where they traveled a lot, or like I used to do some mountain climbing and people would go on these 5-6 week climbing trips. And I remember thinking, oh, well, these people, when they have kids, they get soft, or it sucks the life out of them. But what I didn't understand is that, like, I don't want to go on a 6-week climbing trip. Like I have no interest in, it's not, I'm not being soft. It's not like I've turned into some dad who's boring or scared or something, but like, I literally don't want to do that anymore. Just as much as I used to want to do it, now I don't want to do it. And so I think that evolution is really neat. And again, for young people listening, you'll understand someday, hopefully.
No, it's true though. It's totally true. It's totally true.
So one more kind of broad question. When you think about all your experience professionally, athletically, just all this cool stuff, all your outdoor fishing, are there people outside of your family, either that you've met or have just read about, that you kind of consider heroes or mentors kind of in the way that you live your life? And like mine, for everybody listening knows, but I'm obsessed with Theodore Roosevelt and just kind of his operating system for life of going hard, working as hard as you can, working with passion, working with purpose. And obviously never met Theodore Roosevelt, but I've read a ton of books. Is there anybody like that in your life that you look to as kind of an example of how you like to live?
Yeah. There's a few. You know, from I guess like non-famous people, just people I know.
Yeah.
You know, I guess I mentioned my dad earlier, but just the way we were raised, my dad was just a really great, hands-on, involved dad. And, you know, his story is unique in the sense that he was, you know, born and raised in Evanston, which is the first suburb north of Chicago. And his dad died when he was 2. Oh, wow. So he never knew his dad. And so when he had 3 boys, it was like his mission that he was going to be this great dad. But he had no model to go on. But just, very involved in my life. And so, you know, and just super, you know, as you talked about, like I've made a lot of different choices and rocked to my own beat, and he's always supported it. So just that kind of, you know, commitment to family. And then, I have this amazing mentor friend, who's actually my dad's best friend, Mike Silverman. He's a turnaround consultant. So he works with failing companies to turn them around and make them successful. I've run every, you know, business idea by Mike, and and he, just this amazing guy who's just like super smart, incredibly like unbelievably hysterical, you know, very, very much a, you know, devoted family guy, rocks to his own beat, could care less what anyone thinks, and he's been hugely helpful through this whole process. I mean, we talk a lot, you know, and he, you know, pushes me on the, you know, the business side of things to, you know, and so, just another person who he's had a huge impact on my life. And then another one, is this guy, he unfortunately is no longer with us, but his name's Kim Montgomery. And he was a dentist in Vermont. And I met him through friends of mine in college. And he is the one that got me into hunting, years ago. And my senior year, you know, we duck hunted a bunch together, and Kim has this amazing wife, Q, 3 boys who are, you know, I'm the middle of 3 boys. He's got 3 boys that I'm still close with. Just emailing with one last week. Anyways, just this amazing family. And again, being from suburban Chicago, like seeing the way they lived in rural Vermont was just very different. And between Kim getting me into hunting and all those mornings spent talking about life in the duck blind, I really, like, when I look back, I really think that like but for meeting Kim Montgomery, like, I don't think I'd be in Montana doing this. Like, it was that, and he, you know, if you ever need an example of life is not fair, Kim was, died a handful of years ago from early Alzheimer's, but just an amazing guy that had a big influence on my life. So I've been lucky with, you know, a few, you know, really good mentors. And then from, you know, I'm not a Teddy. I love Teddy Roosevelt. I'm not a, you know, expert like you are, but he's got some great quotes. I love his overall, sort of what, TR stands for, mm-hmm. But from a, I guess, more of a famous person, I'm an Aldo Leopold super fan. Nice. But actually Sarah, when we were dating, I gave her a Sam County Almanac. I was like, you have to read this book. And she loved it. And then she actually surprised me my 3rd year of law school. And she contacted the Leopold Foundation in Wisconsin and set up a tour of his shack in Baraboo.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was unreal. It was like this, it was like a Saturday morning. It's unmarked. You had to meet just on a random road, and there were like 6 of us. And I had visited Aldo Leopold shack. Our dog's name's Aldo. So he's kind of, I'm a big Aldo Leopold fan.
I need to, I've read some of his stuff, but I have not gone as deep as I need to. And it's almost like embarrassing now because like it continues to come up and I continue to not dig into it as I should. So this might be the final push I need to go. Well, I can't believe it. We're already bumping up on the time, and unfortunately I have to go do office meeting stuff while the stuff that you've left behind. but hey, before we finish, can you tell me a book or two that are your favorites about the American West? Are there any that come to mind that are some of your all-time favorites?
Sure. Well, I mean, I would start with, A Sand County Almanac by Aldo Leopold. It's my favorite book ever. And there's parts of it, the first part, the 12 seasons are mostly focused around his farm in Wisconsin, but some of the essays are Western based, but just an amazing book. And something, kind of gets thrown around, Aldo Leopold, Sand County Almanac, but something it still blows my mind. It's like he died in 1948. Mm-hmm. So like this guy was so far ahead of his time and his thinking. So that's just like, that's the Bible. And then obviously for me personally, Buffalo for the Broken Heart by Dan O'Brien, unreal. And then I guess on the Buffalo, two good Buffalo books I love is American Buffalo by Steve Rinella. Mm-hmm. And then Last Stand. It's on George Bird Grinnell, Saving the Buffalo, Yellowstone National Park. Just a really interesting book about the origins of Yellowstone, the world's first national park, the near extinction of bison. So those are a handful of books that, on the West that I have loved.
Well, man, this was really great, and I'm so glad to learn more about what you're doing, because between seeing your stuff on social media and all of our mutual friends, this has been a long time coming. So next step is I need to come up there and see the place in person. But thank you. Thanks for your time and for sharing all this. It's really fun, and I wish you all the best as you keep this thing going.
No, this is great. Honored to be on your podcast because I love it. I listen to it all the time in the truck, and thanks for all that you do. I mean, that land conservation work is so important, and more important now than ever. So, I love the podcast. So whenever you're in Bozeman next, needless to say, you're come up to the ranch and see it.
Hey, it's Ed again. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast, and thanks for listening to that particular episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Before you go, I've got 3 quick things. Number 1, if you like the podcast, please do me a huge favor. Either pass it along to a friend who may be interested, share it on your social media, or go to iTunes and give it a 5-star review. All those things would mean a lot to me, and they would really help to spread the word about the podcast. Number 2, if you've listened to many of these episodes, you know that I love reading and I love talking about books. Every other month, I send out a quick email with a few books that I've recently read and highly recommend. The subjects are varied, but they're pretty much all nonfiction with an emphasis on history, biographies, adventure narratives, and topics related to the American West. There are no sales pitches for ranches, no spam, no other kind of nonsense, just books. So if you'd like to sign up for the list, head to Mountain and Prairie/reading, or just go to Mountain and Prairie and there's a massive tab at the top that says book recommendations. Click on it. There are a ton of good books that I've read. Some of the old email lists are on there. You can go crazy. There are a lot of books. And finally, if you know anyone I should interview for the podcast, please don't hesitate to reach out and let me know. All my contact info is at mountainandprairie.com, and I'm on all the social media stuff, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, blah, blah, blah. So feel free to reach out. I'd love to have some recommendations and suggestions of interesting people I should meet. All right, that's it. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.